Hello all, my name is Krish Nayak and welcome to my YouTube channel. So guys, today in this particular video, we are going to see how to generate Python automatically using the Mito spreadsheet. And here specifically, we are going to use this library, which is called as Mito sheet. This entire video has been recorded by Jake, who is from Mito company itself, and who will be entirely showing you with respect to all the EDA part and how we can actually use this library in an amazing way. So I hope you like this specific video and probably you watch this entirely. It will be super important for you all in order to perform easy EDA and to perform the other activities that we usually follow in the life cycle of a data science project. So let's go ahead.
Hey, this is Jake from Mito. I'm going to give you an update on some of Mito's newest features and how you can use them to enhance your Python data science and data analysis workflows. So, at a high level, Mito is a spreadsheet interface inside of a Python environment. Right now, we're inside of Jupyter Lab, which is where Mito works. You have to use Mito inside Jupyter Lab, which you can install very easily. The first thing we want to do is get Mito into this spreadsheet. And the important thing about Mito is that every edit we make in the Mito spreadsheet is going to generate the equivalent code down here. So as you'll see, if I filter, if I do a pivot table, anything from a spreadsheet, it will generate the equivalent code in the code cell below. So to get data into the tool, I can do one of two things. I can pass in a data frame as an argument like this, or I can import from my files directly. So I'm going to import this ramen data here. Actually, sorry, I'm going to import some Tesla stock data. Here we go. And we see it imports my data from my spreadsheet into the data set, into the Mito sheet, and it generates the code for doing that below. So important before we move on is just to talk about how to install Mito. So these are the install instructions right here, just these two commands. Run them in your terminal, python-m pip -m pip installer, pip install Mito installer, and then python-m Mito installer install. So you run those and you'll get the Mito sheet. And then once you're inside of the notebook, just import the Mito sheet package, and then mitosheet.sheet calls the interface here. And all of this will be in links at the bottom of the video. So now we have our data in. One thing I might want to do is look at these different dates. And let's say I want to analyze this stock data by month. So I can add a column here, and I can use our month function. And we're going to take a month out of this here, and we get the month, and see we're generating the code for that operation we just did. So now that we've got the month value, let's say I want to do a pivot table giving me the average open value per month. So I'll click pivot. We will do month here. Actually, before I do that, I can go back and I can rename this column here as month. And again, we're generating code for these steps. Now I'm going to do a pivot table. Actually, let's go here. And as my row, I'll put month, and as the value, I will put the open value, and then we'll attach the mean here. And we see this data is a little bit messy, but we'll come back to that in a second. And as we go down here, we see we generated this code for a pivot table. So again, making the pivot table in here generates the code here. We see this is a good chunk of code that might take some time to write yourself, but in Mito, you can do it in just a few seconds. So I wanna format this a bit differently to make it cleaner. So let's just make it so it's to 2 decimal places. So we see we can do that. We can format our data frames like we would in a spreadsheet. And the nice thing you can do with formatting or any of the data is you can export that data to an Excel file. So you can import files, or we can import data frames, and you can take the output of what you've done in Mito and export it back to Excel. So a really great translation layer to go between Python and Excel is one of the great ways Mito is used. So now we're back at this pivot table. We have these values. Let's say I want to do a graph of these values. So I am going to click the graph button, and we're going to look at the months and then the mean open values here. And here's a nice bar chart showing that value. So we can change that to, I think a line graph would do really well here. There we go. Here's we see a line graph showing the values. We could also do a line graph just based on the base data set. Let's say we want to do a graph here, and we just want to look at the date and then the high values there. Here's a nice chart showing that as a line graph. There we go. So multiple different line graphs. We can make them on large data sets or small data sets. And the nice thing we can do is we can copy this code as well. So I'm going to copy the graph code here, and I'm going to run this cell to edit the data frame with the edits we've made. And then if I copy this code, we get this plotly code. So this is the graph code. And we see this is a good chunk of code that might take some time to write. But in Mito, you just make the graph in a really simple interface and then copy the code and you have it. And I will run that. that we can actually get our code in the notebook itself. Some other examples of graphs I just want to show you real quick. We saw bar charts already. We have scatter plots. We have these density heat maps, and we have these graphs here. And I'm going to go back to this. And so now that I go back to this data set, here, let me just show you some other quick functionality in the tool. So we've talked about adding columns and formulas, we talked about pivot tables, and we've talked about graphing. Some other nice things you can do is we could do some filters, for example. So we have these values here. Let's say we want to say that just values greater than 20. We can do that, and we can see it edits the data frame, and we know that there is a filter on because of that icon. And again, we get the code for that filter down here. I'll close that. We could also do undo and redo steps. We can import and export files. We can add columns. We can delete columns. So I want to go to this column right here. Delete. Now it's gone. I can undo that step and bring it back. And these undo and redos will be recorded in the code below. We can add columns, delete columns. We can pivot tables. We can merge two data sets together. We have different types of joins. We can do lookups, lefts, rights, inner, outer, unique and left, unique and right. We can do duplicate data sets to get rid of any duplicate values. And we can graph, and then we can format, which we've already talked about. So there's lots you can do in Mito. It's a spreadsheet inside Python, and again, everything you do in the spreadsheet is going to generate the equivalent code in the cells below. So I hope you check out Mito and hear the install instructions one more time. I'll link the documentation at the bottom for the full install instructions. And in our documentation, you'll see information about how to use all the different features. But yeah, I hope you check it out and get some good use out of it. Thanks so much.